Continue to talk on the Gyoji chapter of the Shobogenzo. Usually I do that in Japanese first, and it's still my hope that one day we can study the text in Japanese, because although it can be helpful to also read it in the English translation, because then you get a different perspective. If you don't have the original and only have the translations, it's a little bit like somebody tells you how Mount Fuji looks from the east and somebody else tells you how it looks from the west, and then you have to imagine how it might look in reality, but you never see the real mountain. So it's definitely an advantage if you can also read the text in the original, and then you understand where all these translations come from and why they differ sometimes, because you can read the same sentence in different ways. But tonight everybody speaks English, so tonight I will talk in English only, and I hope that sooner or later your Japanese improves to a point where you can also follow my Japanese talks. Yeah, first of all, about the Gyoji chapter, I've been talking about this for 2 years or so, I think already. There's 2 parts. The second part where we are right now is the older part. So Dogen wrote the second part first, starting with Bodhidharma. And now we are through with the story about Bodhidharma, and we've reached the second patriarch. And the newer part is the first part. And the first part starts with Shakyamuni and Mahakasho. And before that, Dogen Zenji says something that's quite well important. This is the expression Dokan, which also in the West in Zen circles, it's not a super famous word, but some people might have heard it. It means the ring of the way. And well, this is the way. And the word Do is also translation of Bodhi, so it also means enlightenment. Kan is the ring, like in Osaka, the loop line is called Kanjo-sen. It's kind of, it's closed, it's a loop. And what Dogen Zenji means that the way or enlightenment has the structure of the way of a ring. He means that what in Japanese would be hoshin, which means awakening the mind, arousing the mind. Some people define hoshin as the thought that you want to get enlightenment, seeking for enlightenment. The mind that seeks for enlightenment is sometimes used as an English translation for hoshin, but if you look at the actual word, hoshin, which is short for hotsubodaijin, means to arouse enlightened mind. So nowhere in here the seeking is mentioned. Dogen Zenji himself defines hoshin in his works in different ways. In the Gakudo Jinshu, he first says hotsubodaijin or hoshin means to understand impermanence and to see impermanence. And what he means there is that actually we have only this moment. Our life is impermanent. We're living in impermanence. And Dogen Zenji says if you really understand that, you have only this one moment, then you will practice as if your head was on fire. In other works, like for example in the Tenzo Kyokun, he mentions in the end three minds, the joyful mind, parental mind, and big mind. These three minds are also basically examples of hoshin. To practice with a joyful mind means to be, well, grateful for the fact that you're here right now and you're actually standing in the kitchen, cooking for the Sangha of practitioners. Parental mind means to let go of this thought of, oh shit, it's Hosan today in such nice weather and everybody's enjoying themselves outside and I have to be the Tenzo again. Why do I have to cook for these assholes? And I spent the whole day to cook lunch and they eat it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's over and they wash the dishes and nobody says thank you, nobody says, oh, this was great. And parental mind means to let go of that. Parental minds, or in Japanese it's roshin, old mind. But Dogen Zenji says old mind means the mind of a father or a mother that cooks for their baby. And they don't expect the baby to say, oh, thank you, mother, it was so delicious that you feed me your milk from the breast. They just drink, but the mother is happy when the baby drinks. So preferably the Tenzo should have this mind that you're just happy that you can cook for these people and they eat it, and you don't compare yourself as we usually do. Like, oh, last Tenzo, when I had to work in the rice field, it was raining, and the last guy here did good. He had there in the kitchen when I was doing that hard work, and now when I'm the Tenzo, it's super nice weather and there's Hosan, and why do I have to be Tenzo now? I would have preferred to be 5 days ago. You always compare yourself with the others. You always think you have it worse, and last cycle that Tenzo used all of the tomatoes and now I don't have the tomatoes anymore. I would have liked to use some tomatoes as well, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Roshin means you forget that and you're happy if the baby drinks the milk and you're happy about that. Daishin means to have a mind that's as big as the ocean or as high as a mountain. And why does the mountain become so high? Dogen Zenji asks, why is the ocean so big? Because the ocean accepts any river that flows into it. The ocean doesn't choose and say, oh, I like this river, that river is okay, but the other rivers I don't like. The mountain, if the wind is blowing and transports the leaves on the mountain says, no, don't come here, I don't want any dust, I don't want any leaves on me. Mountain allows all the leaves to settle on himself, and that's why the mountain becomes so big. That's why the ocean becomes so great. So those are also examples of Hoshin. And then in the later part of the Dogen Zenji, of the Shobogenzo, Dogen Zenji writes this chapter Hotsubodaishin, which is about Bodhi mind, arousing Bodhi mind. And there he says to arouse Bodhi mind is to have the wish to help others before yourself. It's the wish to lead others to nirvana before you reach nirvana yourself. Jimi Tokudo Senbota is the Japanese phrase for that. So you're not even enlightened yourself. You haven't found nirvana yourself, but you want to help others reach that first. And Dogen Zenji says that's Hoshin. So that's a pretty high standard of Hoshin compared to the usual translation. Hoshin means to seek for enlightenment. That's maybe the easiest accessible explanation. That's why it's often used also in English books. You realize you're in suffering, your life sucks. If you really tried hard, you could probably make it at school, you could find a job, you could find a girlfriend and marry and have kids. But at the end, what is it all good for? In 50 years from now, you're retired. Maybe you're still married to your wife. Your kids have kids of themselves. You have grandchildren. Maybe you have a house somewhere in the suburbs. But what? You will still get older with each day, become sick and die. Is that the life you want to live? And that scenario is kind of the best scenario that you can have. It could be also the case you never find a job, you never find a girlfriend. Your kids become sick and die before you. You might be born in a area where there's war, or war could start any time in Europe or in America or here in Japan. It's kind of the best scenario is that you're 70, married with grandchildren, but still, why have I been born into this world? What is this? And even in the best scenario, you don't know why you've been born. With each day you get one day older, you get sick and you die, if you want it or not. And people who come to Buddhism in one way or the other probably ask themselves this question: what can I do about this life and the suffering that's involved with it? Why do I suffer? Where does the suffering come from? Is there anything I can do about it? I can't change the fact that I've been born into this world. Now that I'm here, what do I do with this life? How do I want to live? So that could be also chosen as one easy to access definition of Hoshin. Life sucks, but maybe there's something I can do about it. Maybe there's a solution to this. So that's one thing, Hoshin. Then the next thing is Shugyo. In Japanese, you would write it like this. Shugyo, practice. You look for a solution, now you have to do something about it. In our case, practice would mean Zazen at the center. But then everything else, like the meals, samu, taking a bath, enjoying a hosan, a free day, all of that is practice. The 24 hours of the day, you focus on your life and how do I want to use these 24 hours of the day? Today is October 31st of 2018, and you have that day only once in your life. It will never come back. There are only a little less than 6 hours left of that day. How do I use these 6 days? And trying to use them fully, that's practice. And then there's a word which I can't write in characters because they are a little bit complicated, but then in Japanese it would be bodai, which comes from the Indian Bodhi. And Bodhi means, well, awakening, enlightenment. So at that point, according to the easy to access definition, you're looking for enlightenment. You arouse the mind that tries to get enlightened. Here you practice hard, and at this stage, the third stage, you finally reached it. You awaken. Oh, that's the answer. There it is, Bodhi. And last comes Japanese Nehan, which stands for Nirvana. So, if you say Nirvana in Japanese, probably most Buddhists will understand you, but the Japanese word for Nirvana is Nehan. That's what the state you reach, or what you enter after awakening. It might be a kind of, you could ask, well, are these two actually different? Traditionally, probably yes. So traditionally, the Buddha awakened under the Bodhi tree at age 36, but permanent nirvana he entered. So what's it called? Parinirvana? Parinirvana, ne? In Japanese, Hatsune. Parinirvana is the complete nirvana. Complete is being complete extinguished, just like a torch that you blow out, and there's no more suffering. And the Buddha entered that parinirvana, complete nirvana, at age 80 when he died. Until then, of course, he was already an awakened person. He was a Buddha, but he probably still had suffering. So he was hungry when he had eaten for a while. When he died of food poisoning. He was suffering at that time. He wasn't a slave of his delusions anymore, but the complete nirvana is what the Buddha reached after, or when he died. And according to traditional Orthodox Buddhist understanding, it means that he wasn't reborn. Everybody else of us will be reborn if we don't attain Bodhi in this life. And then we have the next life to try our luck once more and try to do it better. And if one fine day we reach Bodhi and become Buddhas, then we will attain Nirvana and will not be reborn again. So anyway, you start here, stage 1. You realize there's a problem. I don't want to be a slave of this game of deluded people anymore. I don't want to be part of that game that the deluded people play anymore. I'll try to use the time of my life in a different way. I'm going to practice, and I will find Bodhi, enlightenment, and finally be released from suffering. All of this will be extinguished, and I'll be in Nirvana. And when Dogen Zenji says Dokan, the ring of the way, what he says is that these 4 are actually arranged like a ring. If this is Hoshin, then here is Shugyo, here is Bodhi, and here is Nehan. So if you go to Osaka, this would be Umeda. Osaka station is in Umeda. And if you're going to go to Shin Imamiya, there's 2 ways you can go. You can go east to Kyobashi, Tennoji, and then here's Shin Imamiya, or you can go the other way around, Nishikujo, Bentensho, Shin Imamiya. You can go either way, but if you go the traditional way, you would start with Hoshin, Shugyo, Bodhi, Nehan. And Dogen Zenji says this is not the end. What comes after Nirvana? After Nirvana, you do Hoshin again, and you practice again Bodhi, reach Bodhi again, and there's another Nirvana. And we all think that at one point we have this realization, I suffer, I need to do something about it, I need to change my life. Where does this thought come from? According to Dogen, again, this comes from Nirvana and Bodhi. Even though nobody thinks when they come to Antaiji, I'm enlightened. you wouldn't have come here if not something had aroused this mind in you. I need to change my life. So Dogen Zenji says, actually, the moment you think, I need to do something about my suffering, I need to change my life, that's already nirvana. It's kind of a thought that's painted on the canvas of nirvana. Your mind is that canvas of nirvana or enlightenment. You're not aware of that at that point, maybe. At that point, you think, I still need to get it, I still need to get it. But actually, you wouldn't have that thought if Bodhi wouldn't support it. It's growing on Bodhi. So that's how Dogen Zenji starts this chapter, Yoji chapter. Hoshin, Shugyo, Bodai, Nehan are, actually there's no gap in between, he says there. There's no gap between these fours. They are like a ring. They occur together. And another thing that he says there, to practice in this way, to practice this ring, it's not something that you do through your own force. It's not also not something that others force you to do. You don't do it forcefully. You don't fight to practice this ring of the way. Others don't force you to do it, but rather it's well, a little bit like the Kanjo-sen in Osaka. You're sitting in the train, and the moment you wake up, you're actually on the train. The ring of the way transports you. And then what he writes in the whole Yoji chapter, in a way, it sounds quite different from that. So he emphasizes how much of a hard time the patriarchs had and how many hardships they endured, how cold it was in the winter, how poor the food was, that it leaked through the roof when it was raining, that they didn't know what to wear, and so on and so on and so on. And we need to learn from the patriarchs. And interesting, that what most of us interests most. How did these guys get enlightened? Like at one point the master shouted and the student, oh, that's it. What you find in the koan books, that's always missing. So Dogen Zenji, from patriarch to patriarch, he emphasizes that for years they only picked up, nuts that had fallen from the trees and sat in the mountains without meeting anybody. And it sounds like very hard practice, and it sounds that they made a big effort. But then what I talked about last month after Bodhidharma and the second patriarch, Dogen Zenji, comes to this point where he talks about repaying the debt. Is that the English translation?
I think repaying the debt of gratitude.
Repaying the debt of gratitude. In Japanese, it's just hoon.
Yeah, we should unfailingly repay
Pardon?
our debt of gratitude to the patriarch. We should unfailingly repay our debt of gratitude to the patriarch.
Okay, so yeah, repaying our debt of gratitude to the patriarchs. And that's a very important concept for Dogen that I think appeared in the chapter for the first time last month. Until then, for many months, it just sounded like, hey, think about how hard it must have been for Bodhidharma. Think about how hard it must have been for the Buddha or Mahakashapa and all the other patriarchs. If it has been so hard for them, you have to do even more. But then, now he gets to the point where he says, well, look, you're practicing already. Tomorrow you will be doing a session for 5 days. You will be sitting on the zafu. Why is that possible? How is that possible? that you're doing that. And it happens from time to time that somebody disappears during a session because it's too hard for them. But most people, miraculously, they do it, even though in the middle of the session, usually it feels like pretty hard, and everybody thinks about it probably more than once or twice, that maybe I should rather leave. How can I be so stupid that I sit here for 5 days when I could have fun with my girlfriend, or be in Shinomamiya in Osaka, or go to the beach in Hamasaka, whatever. Why do I do this? And when I ask what is it good for, the answer is it's good for nothing. Why would I do it? And still, almost everyone does it for 5 days, and then they do it again the next month. How's that possible? And Dogen's answer, it's, well, because we're sitting in this train that transports us around the ring of the way. It's because of the practice that has been maintained from Buddha to Buddha, from patriarch to patriarch. So when we practice, it's not that we try to gain something that's still ahead, but actually we're pushed by the Buddhas and patriarchs, and we are repaying our debts. We are pulling a train that's been circling around here since the beginning of time. Well, or pulling is not the right way. We're continuing. We've been sitting in this train forever, and now it feels like maybe now I'm the locomotive. I have to pull. But actually, the other cars from behind, they've been pushing you all the time. So that means repaying the debt to the patriarchs. We wouldn't be here without the patriarchs. We wouldn't be here without something that brought us here. And this realization that actually there's something that's carrying you, that you're sitting in a train. Sitting in a train that goes from enlightenment to enlightenment. It goes from practice to practice. That has something to do with that story that I love to repeat over and over again. On the third day of session, you've heard it over and over. In case you die, there's still space for you in the graveyard, but you don't want to die. On the other hand, you can't fight anymore. You don't want to escape. What can you do? Well, let's see what happens. And you sit there, and in the worst case, you might die. And that's when you realize, oh, it's actually very easy. I don't have to fight. I don't have to escape. If I die, I will die. And until then, I'm gonna sit. And even though you might have thought, I'm dying, this is gonna kill me, I can't make it till the end of the session like this, you realize, oh, but I'm sitting right now. I'm sitting just fine. The pain is there, but the pain doesn't kill me. I'm still breathing. There's enough oxygen for me to breathe. Even Mumyo had enough oxygen to breathe. There's water. Sometimes it's a little bit dirty. There's enough water. And the Tenzo is cooking for us. Tenzo might be complaining about his fate, having to be the Tenzo during session. Sometimes the other guys, they are actually envious of the Tenzo. I wish I could be the Tenzo now. I have to sit. I'm in pain. The Tenzo, they can stretch their legs. It's whatever. At the end of the day, you might realize there's really nothing to complain about. What did I complain about all the time? Once you stop fighting, you stop escaping, you stop comparing your fate with the fate of others, you stop comparing today with yesterday and tomorrow, when no comparison is possible in the first place. You might realize that things are just fine, but that realization, where does it come from? And when you realize in that moment, I'm just sitting and I'm doing fine. Where does this power to continue to sit come from? From my experience, you make that realization in a moment where you've already given up. So you stop fighting. You stop fighting, and in that moment you realize, but I'm sitting. So at least for me, it feels like this marathon runner who thought, I'm running. And in the moment you give up, you realize, oh, I'm sitting in a train here. I was running. Sawaki Roshi uses this example of somebody who's running in a train so that they might get to Satori faster. He says it's like you're running in a train. There's no need to run. Just relax. It's just that while we're sitting in the train, we're also the locomotive. But all the other cars in the train are pushing the locomotive. So it's not that you alone have to fight, but you go along, and the other cars that push you, and there's actually maybe an invisible locomotive in front of the locomotive that are the Buddhist patriarchs. And by just sitting one period at a time, giving your best, giving your whole, you're repaying the debt to the Buddhist patriarchs that give you the strength, that transport you, that push you on that way. Okay, so that would be in a nutshell the Gyoji chapter up to this point. Before I continue to read, do you have any questions? Either about the chapter itself or anything else you want to know? For Bushin, it might be the last Teisho for a couple of months, so that would be a chance to ask something also for you. You hear this Gyoji chapter Teisho every month, but maybe there's something that's missing or something else that you would want to know. So, if you have any questions at this point, don't hesitate to ask before I start to read the text. Yes, please.
Just in reference to what you're saying about kind of giving up on the cushion during sesshin. So, what's the difference between letting go of something and giving up?
Letting go and giving up. Well, letting go is probably the more softer, the less over the top expression. Letting go. Giving up is maybe a little bit stronger version. Like giving up, I in this case I say giving up because it can occur in a situation where you're completely desperate. You give your best. You've been giving your best for quite a while. Maybe you got some results out of your practice. Something's changed. There's some progress. But there's one thing missing, that the crucial thing is missing. You still haven't found that one thing that you were looking for. And it's still, it seems to be completely out of reach. And you've been making so much progress, but only so much. And there seems to be this, sometimes it feels like an invisible wall that you're kind of confronting, and you can't get further than that point. So you're faced with this invisible wall. You can't break through. You can't even really see it. You don't see it. So what is keeping me from getting any further than here? And well, you could also say letting go, like what Uchiyama Roshi says, letting go of the thoughts and letting go. But how do you let go? Like there's also this let it go, let it go. It at one point it was a big hit in Japan, probably also in the West. This kind of Disney movie Frozen, and it was the kind of song in there. And the Japanese translation was kind of different from the original English text, but I mean there that girl sings about letting go, and probably basically what she means is I'm just gonna do my thing and I don't care what the others think about it. And who cares what the rest of the world thinks? I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna be me. So it's quite different from what in Zen we would call letting go. But when we say letting go, probably a lot of people think, oh, I'm just gonna let things be, and I'm just gonna go with the flow. I'm gonna be myself, or whatever. If I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat. If I'm sleepy, I'm gonna sleep. If I have to go to the toilet, I do that. That's also one way of letting go. But at this point I'm talking about, there's really nothing you can do. You get at this point where you can't do anything. You can't do anything, but you have to do something, or there's nothing you can do, but you have to do something there on the cushion. And well, I call it giving up. You could call it letting go as well, if you prefer that word. And one thing that's often understood when I say either letting go or giving up, sometimes people are then surprised if in the next sentence I talk about acceptance, or just accepting reality as it is. For example, when I talk about the pain, I sometimes say, well, just accept it as it is. Or talking about life in general and death, just take life as it is, take death as it is, take reality as it is, accept it. And sometimes people then ask me, well, how is that possible when you let go of things? Doesn't that mean that, well, you separate yourself from it? Isn't that the complete opposite of accepting? And I'm usually a little bit surprised by that feedback because for me it's kind of natural that these two things go together. So giving up or letting go means to completely accept the situation in that moment. In that case, it might psychologically even feel as if, well, this is killing me. I'm never gonna get out of here alive. And you accept that. That's what I mean by giving up. You accept it. Say, okay, if that's the case, so be it. So be it. And another thing that might be necessary to say, if I say that, then some people are reminded of the kamikaze fighters during the Second World War, or the samurais that fought in Japan a couple of 100 years ago. And I say, okay, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna... hit that boat with my plane and blow it all up. And that's not the attitude I'm talking about. Giving up, not in this way, oh, I give up, but also not this kamikaze fighter, fight until the last man, but rather it's okay. There's nothing more I can do. So I'm just gonna leave everything to the Zen. And allow the Zen to do anything it wants to do with me. If it's gonna kill me, let it kill me. If it's gonna give life to me, let it give life to me. And see what happens. That's what I mean when I say giving up. And you can call it letting go as well. And it means also acceptance at the same time. Is there anything else? If not, I'm gonna continue with the Gyoji chapter. In the Japanese version, it's Iwanami Bunko, and I think in the Iwanami Bunko it would be page 369. I'll read the Japanese text anyway. Seni no nasake aru, kingin shingan no moke nao hoshasu, kogo kosho no yoshimi, kokoro aru wa minna hosha no nasake o hagemu. Nyorai mujo no shobo o kenmon suru daion, tare no ninmen ka wasururu toki aran. これを忘れざらん一生の珍宝なり。この行事を不退転ならん境外ドクロは、生じ、死じ、同じく七宝刀に収め、一切人伝、海王供養の功徳なり。格のごとく大恩ありと知りなば、必ず僧侶の命をいたずらに霊落せしめず。女性の徳を年頃に報ずべし。これすなわち行事なり。Can you lend me that English translation? So here I'm reading from the Nishijima translation. Simply to maintain the practice day by day. That's what I already read last month. I'm going to, start here. Simply to maintain the practice day by day. Only this is the right way to repay our gratitude. The principle here is to maintain the practice so that the life of every day is not neglected and not wasted on private pursuits. For what reason? Because this life of ours is a blessing left over from past maintenance of the practice. Maintenance of the practice is Nishijima's translation of Gyoji, which is the title of the chapter. So it's the past Gyoji that blesses us with this life. It is a great favor bestowed by maintenance of the practice, which we should hasten to repay. How lamentable, how shameful it would be to turn skeletons whose life has been realized through a share of the virtue of the Buddhist patriarchs, maintenance of the practice, into the idle playthings of wives and children, to abandon them to the trifling of wives and children without regret for breaking precepts and debasing pure conduct. It is out of wrongness and madness that people give over their life body and life to the demons of fame and profit. Well, I was talking about this already last month, and there was the question about the demons. So that's basically our psychology that makes us want to be famous and have profit. Fame and profit are the one great enemy. If we are to assign weight to fame and profit, we should really appreciate fame and profit. Really to appreciate fame and profit means never to entrust to fame and profit and thereby cause to be destroyed the body and life which might become a Buddhist patriarch. Appreciation of wives, children and relatives also should be like this. Do not study fame and profit as phantoms in a dream or flowers in space. Study them as they are to living beings. Do not accumulate wrongs and retribution because you have failed to appreciate fame and profit. When the right eyes of learning and practice widely survey all directions, they should be like this. Even a worldly person, and this is where today's texts start, I think. This fame and profit part I did last month. With the next sentence, we enter this today's study. Even a worldly person who has any human feeling on receiving charity through gold, silver, or precious goods will return the kindness. The friendliness of gentle words and a gentle voice spurs in all who have a heart the goodwill to return the kindness. What kind of human being could ever forget the great blessing of seeing and hearing the Tathagata Supreme Right Dharma? Never to forget this blessing is itself a lifelong treasure. A skeleton or a skull that has never regressed or strayed in this maintenance of the practice has, at the time of life and at the time of death equally, such virtue that it deserves to be kept in a stupa of the 7 treasures and to be served offerings by all human beings and gods. Having recognized that we hold such a great debt of gratitude, we should without fail, without letting our life of dew on grass fall in vain, wholeheartedly repay the mountain-like virtue of the sacred patriarch. This is maintaining the practice. I read a little bit further on. Kono gyoji no ko wa sobutsu toshite gyoji suru ware arishi nari. Oyoso shoso niso katsute shoran o sousou sezu, chiso no hammu nashi, oyobi sanso shiso mo mata kaku no gotoshi, goso rokuso no jiin o jisou sezu, seigen nangaku mo mata kaku no gotoshi. The merit of this maintaining the practice is already present in us, who are maintaining the practice as patriarch or Buddha. In conclusion, the first patriarch and the second patriarch never founded a temple. They were free from the complicated business of mowing undergrowth. And the third patriarch and the fourth patriarch were also like that. The fifth patriarch and the sixth patriarch did not establish their own temple, and Seigen and Nangaku were also like that. So again, Dogen Zenji says, when we practice, it's not to become Buddhas one fine day, but we are actually repaying our debt to the patriarchs that enable us to do this practice. I don't know how that sounds to your ears, but depending on the person, I don't know if you know the Shushogi. Shushogi is part of the Soto Shu Sutra books, but as we don't read the sutra so often, you probably rarely open a sutra book here at Antaiji. The Shushogi is a sutra that was first edited, or that came into existence only 150 years ago, so it's very new. And the Shushogi is made up from quotations from Dogen Zenji Shobo Genzo. And what a lot of people find, how would you say, a little bit disappointing about the Shushogi is that Zazen isn't even mentioned once. The word Zazen doesn't even occur once. Zazen, that was so important for Dogen Zenji, isn't even mentioned in the whole Shushogi. It's not super long, but I mean, if you chant it, I would say 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It's compared to the Hanya Shingo, it's a long text. I would say almost, well, 10 times of the volume of the Hanya Shingo. So you would expect, if this is the essence of Dogen Zenji, that you would hear about Zazen in there. But Zazen isn't mentioned. Rather, it starts with a sentence, Bukke no ichi daiji wa shou o akirame, shi o akiramuru wa bukke no ichi daiji no innen nari. Shou o akirame means to clarify life, to clarify life, to clarify death. Those are the most important things in the house of the Buddha. And then there are a few quotes from the Shoji chapter of the Shobo Genzo, where Dogen Zenji says that life and death in itself are nirvana. And from there, a large portion of the Shogi are quotes from the later work of Dogen Zenji, where quite different from the young Dogen Zenji. He talks a lot about, for example, karma, and he talks about the afterlife. He talks about rebirth. And in the Shushogi, the text continues that, well, you might die any time. Now think about all the bad karma that you have accumulated. And on the day you die, your father and mother won't help you, your wife won't help you, your kids won't help you, you're gonna be facing death alone. The only thing that's gonna go with you, that's gonna accompany you when you're dying, is your bad karma from old times. So what can you do? Repent. First you need to repent, and then you take the precepts. Take the precepts. And that's kind of the central part of the Shushogi. And after that come quotes from the Hotsubo Daishin chapter of the Shobo Genzo. Even though you're not saved yourself right now, you haven't attained nirvana for yourself, you should arouse the mind that tries to help others. And there are 4 ways of a bodhisattva to help others. In Japanese, these are fuse, aigo, rigyo, doji, which means to give both of your material wealth, but also of everything you know, your bodily presence, your time. Share everything, letting go. It means fuse, to give. Aigo are kind words. Try to help others with words. And that doesn't mean that you have to give very difficult, lengthy advice, like a life coach or so. It can mean that in the morning you say Ohayo gozaimasu, in the evening you say Oyasumi nasai, during the day you say Otsukare sama deshita. Even words like this can sometimes be a help. Because you connect with people in this way. Rigyo means to work with others, cooperate with others, do something for them. Doji means to share your life and share the life of the others. Those are 4 ways of a bodhisattva to connect to his fellow living beings, which are also mentioned in the Shushogi. And then the last part of the Shushogi, there are lots of quotes from the Gyoji chapter, and especially what we talk about today, repaying the debt. Gyoji Horn is the last 5th chapter of the Shushogi. And a lot of people have difficulties with the Shushogi for one thing, because Zazen isn't mentioned even once. Another thing that especially Westerners have difficulties with is that the structure of the Shushogi is it's almost like Christianity. First, like here, think about how sinful you are. Think about the sinful life you have led, and repent. You should repent and take the precepts, or in Christianity would be you should baptize, and then you should repay your debt. Now here you have this life from God, and although you're such a sinner, God has forgiven you. Now you should also forgive your neighbor and love thy neighbor. And the Shushogi, there's certain similarities, and so I could imagine that maybe some of you, when you read today's part of the Shobo Genzo, where Dogen Zenji is talking about repaying the debt. The idea of debt might already, for some of you, for some years, kind of sound like suspicious. Why is there debt? I didn't ask to be born into this world. I didn't ask anybody to be here. So why is there debt? Why do I have to repay anything? I don't owe anybody anything. Isn't this a little bit like the Christian idea of original sin? That only by being born into this world, we already owe somebody something. Isn't that a strange idea? I think many of us from the West have a problem with this idea of original sin, and we are attracted to the fact that in Buddhism, we almost never hear about sin or debt, and rather the opposite, that just be as you are. Just be as you are. And we are already Buddhas. We just have to let go of our egos. The moment we let go of our egos, we're already Buddhas, Bodhisattvas. There's no debt to repay. And here Dogen Zenji repeatedly talks about repaying the debt. Why? There's one chapter in the Zuimonki that we study here every 5 days that I personally find very interesting, because it also kind of hits the same mark. I forgot the number of the chapter now, but Dogen Zenji there quotes the Chinese Zen master Dai, who was a Rinzai Zen master who lived about 100 years before Dogen. Dogen says, according to Dai, you should practice like somebody who owns a fortune, like billions of dollars. He has this debt, but he has no money, not a penny in his pockets. And then he's faced with a situation that they tell him, now you have to pay back that debt. But I don't have a penny. I don't have a penny. I can't pay you back. You have to pay me back now. If you have this attitude, if you practice with the attitude of somebody being in that situation, it will be easy for you to attain the way, Dogen Zenji says. And he's quoting the Shinjin Me, which is a Chinese sutra which starts with the words, the way is easy to attain. You just have to stop picking and choosing. You just have to stop comparing. Just stop about thinking of gain and loss. And in that moment, it will be easy for you to attain the way. So enlightenment, it's really easy. It's really easy. Just stop picking and choosing. It's just that for probably all of us, even though we hear that enlightenment is easy to attain, in practice it's not so easy. Why is it not so easy? And Dogen Zenji says, well, you don't have the attitude that you owe a debt. You owe billions. And you don't have a penny in your pocket. The attitude we usually have is, I don't have a penny. Where's my pocket money? Please, mommy, give me my pocket money. I did all my homework. Sometimes even in Antaiju, there's people who say, well, I do so much Samu and I do the Tenzo and I do 1,800 hours of Zazen a year. Why can't Antaiju pay me a little pocket money? Why do I have to pay the health insurance out of my own pockets? I want some pocket money. And when it comes to Satori, sometimes we have the same attitude. Like, I've been practicing for so many years now. Where's my Satori? Where's my Satori? And I've been doing so many sessions, I really give up each time and I let go of my ego. I've letting go of my ego. I do my best to let go. Still no Satori. Where's my Satori? And Dogen would say, well, that's why you don't get your Satori. Nobody owes you a Satori. Nobody owes you pocket money. When was the last time you paid back your Satori? When did you pay back for the fact that you're here now in Antaiju and you can sit 5-day session every month? When did you pay back for that? Did you pay back your parents? Did you pay back anybody? And we say we're self-sufficient, so we eat our own rice, we eat our own vegetables. Well, what do? We plant a little bit in the spring, and now we harvest in the autumn. And all the rest is done by the earth and the sun and the rain. And when did we pay back? Never. We eat, and we say, hey, that's our own rice, that's our own vegetables. We never even thought about paying back anything, a penny. So if you have this attitude, like I never paid back anything, but I owe a billion. In that moment, it's easy to let go. I have nothing to give you, so take my body and mind if you want. You take everything, please. I'm willing to get go of my life if it's necessary. And in that moment, it's easy. That moment is easy. So this concept, it might remind us of the concept of original sin in Christianity, and a lot of people are allergic against that. But well, it could be that in Christianity also this concept of original sin is there for exactly this reason. You need to let go. You need to let completely go of yourself. Otherwise, you can't live in Jesus, or you can't allow Jesus to live through you. In Buddhism, you would say, well, to be able to live as a bodhisattva, you have to let completely go. And only then will you feel this bodhisattva train that's pushing you. And you're sitting actually in the train. You've been sitting there all the time. It's just that you didn't realize it because you were running and crying, Mom, where's my pocket money? When do I get my pocket money? I want candy, I want candy, I want candy. Okay, 7:10. The text, of course, still continues for quite a while, but right now we are at a point where the topic changes. Next is Sekito Kisen, so a new patriarch. Dogen Zenji has finished with Bodhidharma. He talked a little bit about the second patriarch who cut off his arm in the snow, and about the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, he says that they never bothered to build a temple. The same is true for Seigen and Nangaku, from whom the Soto and the Rinzai branches stem forth. And then next month we will talk about Sekito, and then there's Dai, Doshin, and other patriarchs. So it's still a little bit early, but again, if you have any questions, anything you want to know about, please feel free to ask. 何でもいいですから、日本語でもいいですし、英語でもいいですし、聞きたいことがあれば何でも聞いてください。Nothing. About the threshing that I was talking about, so Eko-san is hoping to be able to do it on the 3rd, but the weather forecast for tomorrow is kind of not clear. It might be raining, according to tenki.jp that I looked on. So before you take off the cover, maybe have a good look at the forecast and then the sky. Maybe tomorrow is still too early on the 2nd. The weather might improve, but yeah, I'm not quite sure if the 3rd is actually the best day. And according to tenki.jp, the weather might last until the 5th, so it might be actually the 4th or the 5th might be better option. But Eko-san will also have to decide that. Yes, please.
I have a question. The question is, I always listen
Mm.
to this, what you just told, other teachers.
Yes.
I always find I never have a question.
Good.
So I was like,
Mm.
oh, it's good. I don't say, I don't understand it like, but I feel I don't have a question. I think, I don't know. It's just,
Yeah, it can be a good thing, can also be maybe not such a good thing, because I mean, if you have a question, even if you don't get an answer to the question, there's something that keeps you going. Like I talked about this invisible wall. If you don't have a question, there's no wall, which is maybe a good thing. Maybe you're already there. You're already in the here and now, and you're living each moment to the full. Or it could be that you haven't even, confronted that wall, and that's when you're there against that wall. There's a question you can't even express it. Like, but there's something I need to get through this wall. I can't even really get a grasp on the wall. And in that moment, no answer will satisfy you, but there's a very strong question in that moment. It doesn't really feel good to be in that situation as I need to solve this question that I can't even really express. But if you say, I don't have a question, good for you, good for you. Maybe there's no wall. Or maybe next year you're going to have a question. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, the good thing about having a question is that it keeps you awake. Like often in the sutras that they mention this example of there's a stick lying there, but it might also be a snake. You're not quite sure what it is. If you have a question and what is this? Is this a stick? Is it a snake? Then you'll be very attentive, and we will look out for the thing. Is it moving? Is it not moving? Your eyes are wide open. If you say a stick, that's a stick, then it already disappears out of sight. Oh, that's a stick. No question. Can also happen at antaiji. At first, when you come, your eyes are wide awake because everything is new to you. You have to learn how to enter the oforo and the meals, and so then everything is new. 1,000 things to learn. You're wide awake. But the second year, the third year, it's already routine. Oh, okay, another Jikido. Oh, another tenzo rotation. And again, we do this samu, that samu, that samu, that samu. There's no question anymore. There's nothing new anymore. It becomes just one more leaf in the calendar and you tear it off and then it's gone. So a good thing about having a question is it really keeps you awake and it doesn't allow you to settle in this kind of business as usual mode. The dangerous thing about not having a question is, you might settle in this. Okay, I've heard that talk for a lot of times. Okay, another of these t-shirts. Huh? Another 5-day session. I'm gonna survive it. I've done enough of those. So. But yeah, good for me. If you don't have a question, I have nothing to say. Yes, please.
So, in relation to that, I mean, can you say the same thing about if you say you have a question and you're awake? Can you say the same thing about being doubtful? Like if you're always maybe you've got many doubts, why am I here? And what am I doing? Like, is that the same type of being awake?
Yes. That's why they sometimes say in Zen, first you need a great doubt. Which is different from lots of doubt, like why do I have to arrange my slippers? Is it so important that I switch off the electric lights after I've been in the toilet? And why do we do it like this? And why can't I hit the bell in a different way? Not these doubts, but kind of the fundamental doubts. Why am I here in the first place? Who am I? What is life? And I got these 24 hours each day, each new day I got 24 hours. What I do with this time? How am I going to use this time of my life? And that's, if you have that doubt, that keeps you awake. It also keeps you restless, and it's not pleasant to be in that state where I need to find out, but I have no clue. Nobody gives me a satisfying answer. I've read so many books, and still this doubt stays the same. But it keeps you awake. Keeps you awake. Keeps you kind of, how do you say, at the ball. It was soccer, like you're aiming at that ball. I need to get that ball. While if you kind of have this attitude, well, there's 11 players in the game, and there's others who are better defenders than me. There's others who are better. It's putting the ball in the goal, and I'm going to pass it from that person to that person. But if I don't have the ball, I can't make any mistakes. So you need to, realize that nobody can live these 24 hours of the day for you. That's the point of the story of the tenzo that Dogen meant in China. If I don't dry the mushrooms, anybody else can do it, yes, but that's my life. If I don't do this job right here and now, nobody can do it for me, or they can do it, but then it's their job and it's their life. You can't take away this life from me, the practice of my life from me. And well, for that, again, it's helpful to have a doubt. What is this life? What is that's happening right now?
question just about this chapter.
Yes.
The last part of it, he sort of concludes by saying, in conclusion, and then sort of lists the first until the sixth patriarchs and also Seigen and Nangaku.
Yes.
They didn't establish their own temples. I'm wondering sort of how that's connected to this repaying this debt of gratitude, and then he sort of says in conclusion, all of these patriarchs didn't.
Yeah, it seems to be a little bit artificially attached. I mean, Dogen Zenji before that and also after that often emphasizes how poor the patriarchs were and that they didn't covet any property for themselves. They also didn't make a point of establishing a temple for themselves. In the Zuimonki, Dogen Zenji goes to some length to explain why he's building Koshoji in the south of Kyoto. He says, well, in China it was raining through the roof, and the temple administrators told the abbot, hey, we need to repair. And the abbot said, well, if it's raining through the roof, just let it sit in some other dry spot. We don't have to repair the temple only because it's raining through the roof. Dogen Zenji says, well, that's the mind of the patriarchs, that's how it should be, but right now I have some time and there's some patrons that are helping me, so that's why I'm establishing Koshoji. But obviously he felt a need to explain why he would build a temple. So obviously also he was kind of maybe having questions about, well, is this actually the right thing to do there? Of course, for the Sangha, they need a place to practice. For that, we need a temple. But maybe also he felt some, well, what he would there call a demon, kind of this voice of the demon, hey, and now I'm establishing the temple now. It's the first Zen temple in Japan. And at the time, also in Kyoto City, a lot of big temples were being built. So Kenninji was already built, and Dogen practiced there when he was young. It's possible that when he came back from China that he was actually hoping to get some position there at Kenninji. Later they built Tofukuji, which today is still a big temple, but when it was first built it was a huge complex where hundreds of monks could live. And that temple was built when Dogen Zenji was still in Kyoto, and some people say maybe he had hopes somewhere that he would be invited to become the abbot, but he wasn't. And some people say that was also part of the disappointment that led him to leave Kyoto. We don't know if that's true, but it's well possible that Dogen Zenji was also a human being, and he saw that there's all these big new temples, Zen temples being built in Kyoto, and nobody asks me to become the abbot when I've been in China and I dropped off body and mind. And then he said at one point, let's go to Fukui, go into the mountains, basically what Bodhidharma said when the emperor didn't want to understand him in the southern Chinese capital. And Bodhidharma didn't build a temple, the second patriarch didn't build a temple, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I mean, Dogen Zenji then ended up building some kind of temple, but it was in the mountains. So transmitting Buddhism doesn't mean to build a huge temple and become the abbot of some famous temple. And to remind himself of that, probably he says here, well, what I need to do now is to repay my debt to the patriarchs. And for that, it's completely unimportant how many temples I have built. If I have a temple of a huge fancy place in Kyoto, or if I live in some simple hut there in Fukui Prefecture. I could imagine, or I have the feeling that it's also here at the text that we read today, but also in Zuimonki and in other parts of the Shobogenzo. Dogen Zenji is talking to himself when he's talking about this desire for fame and profit, but also this attachment to the ego. Of course, he's also talking to all of us, but I think he's also talking about his own life problems at that time. So, he probably somewhere had the idea, if all of these other guys who haven't even been to China, who haven't really understand Bodhi minds, they have all their big fancy temples, how come that I have to go to the countryside and there's this patron I have that wants to build me a temple, but it's somewhere off there in the mountains where only Shika and Inoshishi live, and I don't even know if I've enough to eat for me and my disciples. But then he says, well, if Bodhidharma did it and the second patriarch and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth patriarch all did it, let's repay my debt. I have no candy to wait for, and my mom is not going to give me any more pocket money. Anything else? Hai, hogani nakele ga owari ni shimashou. Let's finish. Shuzhon hen seigando bon no mujin seigandan oman myo seigangaku butsudo muzo seiganjo shuzo muhen seigando bon no mujin seigandan oman myo seigangaku butsudo